My fiancé texted, "I'm not in love with you anymore." I replied, "Thanks for the heads up." Then, my name is Jessica Caldwell, and I was 29 years old when my life shattered in 7 words. It was just after 10 at night. I was perched on the edge of our bed, the one Nathan and I had spent an entire Saturday building together, cursing at the instruction manual, and laughing until our sides hurt. My phone screen glowed in the darkness, and there it was, stark and brutal against the blue light, that "I'm not in love with you anymore." No phone call. No, we need to talk. Just a text message as cold and surgical as a coroner's report. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and yanked out my heart without anesthesia. I stared at those 7 words. Once. Twice. 3 times. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard, trembling with the urge to fire back 100 desperate, angry replies. How could you? What did I do? When did this happen? But somewhere beneath the shock, a cruel clarity settled in. His message wasn't an invitation to discuss anything. It was a verdict already delivered. So I typed back 5 words of my own. "Thanks for the heads up." Then I switched my phone to airplane mode and dropped it on the nightstand like it had burned me. The silence in our apartment became suffocating. The only sound was the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, completely indifferent to the fact that my entire world had just collapsed. I sat there in the darkness, waiting for rage to arrive, for tears to come, for something to break inside me. But what I felt instead was ice, a strange detachment, like I was watching someone else's life implode from a safe distance. A bizarre clarity washed over me in that moment. This wasn't about building our future anymore. It was about dismantling it with as little collateral damage as possible. And I was going to do it methodically, efficiently, without giving him the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. The next morning arrived too quickly and too slowly. I didn't storm around the apartment throwing things or sobbing into my pillow. Instead, I brewed a pot of coffee, walked out onto our tiny balcony, and watched downtown Chicago wake up beneath me. My hands trembled around the ceramic mug, but my mind kept circling back to the same phrase, like a mantra. Damage assessment first. I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. Title: Project Disentanglement. The clinical language helped keep the emotion at bay. I started listing everything we shared: bank accounts, security deposits, wedding vendors. We were supposed to get married in 3 months. 3 months. Invitations had already been mailed. My dress was hanging in our closet like a ghost. With every line I added to that spreadsheet, my stomach dropped further. The venue: Riverside Manor, a gorgeous estate on the Fox River. $15,000 deposit, completely non-refundable. The caterer, a sweet older man named Mr. Peterson who'd personally taste-tested every dish with us. Willing to refund half, a small mercy in the storm. The photographer, cold and businesslike. My schedule is booked. Your deposit is non-negotiable. The florist, apologetic but firm. This close to the date, there's nothing I can do. By the end of that week, the total financial loss stood at just over $28,000. My money. I had insisted on paying for everything myself, a gesture that had felt like love and partnership at the time. Now it felt like the cruelest punchline imaginable. Packing my things took 2 days. Clothes first, then books, my work laptop and files, photographs that no longer meant what they once did. I moved through our apartment like a ghost, methodical and silent. Nathan's belongings I left completely untouched. Vindictiveness didn't interest me. Closure did. The engagement ring was the hardest part. It was a custom design, white gold with a sapphire center stone because I'd never wanted a traditional diamond. Nathan had presented it to me on the Navy Pier, down on one knee with Lake Michigan stretching out behind him. I had thought it symbolized forever, that I carried it to a jeweler on State Street. The man behind the counter examined it through his loupe, made some notes, and offered me 30% of what Nathan had paid. I didn't negotiate. I just slid it across the glass counter without a word. The money wasn't the point. Erasing the symbol was. The wedding dress was somehow worse. $7,000 hanging in our closet like the ghost of a future that would never exist. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore. I took detailed photographs, the intricate lace, the way the fabric caught the light, the delicate beading along the bodice. Then I listed it on a wedding resale site. Title: Custom gown never worn. Fiancée had a change of heart. Maybe it would sell. Maybe it wouldn't. But at least it was no longer just hanging there, haunting me every time I opened the closet door. And then there was the apartment itself. Our lease carried a steep break fee, 2 months' rent, $3,600. When I called our landlord, Mr. Rodriguez, he didn't sugarcoat things. Find someone to take over immediately, and I'll waive the fee, he said. Otherwise, you're paying out the full amount. So the hunt began. I posted ads everywhere. I showed the apartment to students, young professionals, a couple who seemed interested until they found out about the lease terms. Every showing felt like displaying the scene of a crime. All the while, Nathan's silence stretched on like a rope slowly tightening around my throat. 3 days passed. 4. 5. Then the texts started arriving. Can we talk? You're being so dramatic about this. My mom is worried. She keeps calling me. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. He had detonated our entire life together with a late-night text message. And somehow I was the one being dramatic. I saved each message into a folder on my phone labeled simply Nathan. Something deep in my gut told me I might need proof later. Then, just as I was trying to hold the remaining pieces of my life together, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Jessica, sweetheart. The voice was syrupy, false concern dripping from every syllable. Nathan's father, Richard. I know Nathan can be impulsive sometimes, but you two really need to sit down and talk this through like adults. A mature woman doesn't run away from a little pre-wedding anxiety. My finger found the end call button before my brain could fully process what he'd just said. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear even though the line was dead. Hands shaking. But not from sadness anymore. For the first time since that 7-word text message, I felt something else rising up inside me. Not grief. Not love. Anger. And that was when I realized Nathan's message had only been the opening move. The real battle was just beginning. The first thing I truly sold wasn't the dress or the ring. It was the idea of us. Every item I touched in that apartment was proof of a promise Nathan had already shattered. The engagement ring had been easy, cold metal pawned at a fraction of its value. The dress was harder, but at least it could become part of someone else's happy ending. But the apartment was the real anchor dragging me down. I spent 3 exhausting days interviewing prospective tenants. Broke college students who could barely afford ramen. A young professional fresh out of Northwestern who had stars in his eyes, but nothing in his bank account. Then finally, I found them. Brandon and Kelsey, newlyweds, eager and relieved to find a move-in ready place in a decent neighborhood. They signed the lease transfer within a week. The relief I felt was almost physical, like unclenching a fist I hadn't realized I'd been holding for weeks. That's when Nathan's text shifted in tone. You can't just shut me out like this, Jess. We need closure. Don't be so cold. This isn't like you. My dad says you're handling this really poorly. Every single word dripped with the same breathtaking arrogance. As if I had been the one to end things. As if I had humiliated him in front of both our families. As if his cowardice was somehow my responsibility to manage. One night he even tried humor. Still have my Bulls jersey. Keep it. It looks better on you anyway. I didn't respond. Not to him. Not to any of it. I simply took screenshots of each message and filed them away in the Nathan folder like evidence in a trial that hadn't started yet. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Men like Nathan, raised by men like Richard, didn't just let things go. Then came the second phone call from Richard. This time his voice was harder, less honey and more steel. Jessica, enough of this childish nonsense. You've embarrassed our family long enough. Nathan made a mistake, but he's willing to admit it and work through things. A real woman forgives pre-wedding jitters. Do you really want to be remembered as the bitter ex who couldn't let go? Is that the reputation you're aiming for? The audacity of it almost made me laugh out loud. Almost. Instead, I let silence fill the space between us. I wanted him to hear the void, to understand that his words carried no weight anymore. Then I hung up. That night, sitting on the bare mattress, our bed already dismantled and boxed up for Goodwill, I stared out at the Chicago skyline and whispered to myself, I'm not the one who should be ashamed. The dismantling wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional, psychological. Every action I took, canceling a deposit, packing another box, listing something online, was me severing another tie that bound me to Nathan. But the more I pulled away, the harder he tried to pull me back. First came pleading. We need to talk face to face. Don't throw away what we had. Then guilt. My mom can't sleep at night. You owe our families an explanation. And finally, anger. This is not how a mature adult handles a breakup. You're being completely irrational. The irony of being called irrational by a man who ended our engagement via text message at 10 o'clock at night wasn't lost on me. Still, I ignored him. I focused on logistics, on the spreadsheet, on the itemized list of everything that needed to be severed and sold. One by one, the threads tying me to Nathan were cut. But then, just as I was finally starting to breathe again, a new thread appeared. This time it wasn't from Nathan. It was from his father. Richard left me a voicemail that night, and his tone had shifted from condescending to openly venomous. You can't just run away from your responsibilities, Jessica. You left Nathan in a complete mess. No home, no support system. If you think you can just walk away from this situation, you're badly mistaken. We have consulted with our attorney, and we will pursue this legally if necessary. You owe him. Remember that. I replayed the message twice, my jaw clenching tighter each time. And in that moment, I realized something crucial. Nathan's betrayal wasn't just about a broken heart or a canceled wedding. It was about power, control, ownership. And his family wasn't going to let me go without a fight. The dismantling of my life had just reached its second phase. And the next strike, I suspected, wouldn't come through a text message or a phone call. It would come pounding at my door. It was a Saturday afternoon when the pounding came. Not at my apartment, but at my brother Carson's house in Oak Park, where I'd been staying while the lease situation got sorted out. Carson's voice came through my phone, low and sharp with protective anger. Jess, you need to get here now. They're outside. My blood turned to ice. They'd be by the time I pulled up in my Honda Civic. My stomach was twisted into knots so tight I thought I might be sick. And there they were, Nathan and his father Richard, standing on Carson's front lawn like they owned the property. Carson was blocking the door, arms folded across his chest, every inch of him radiating barely controlled fury. The second Nathan spotted me climbing out of my car, his entire expression shifted. His eyes went glassy. His shoulders slumped. He was playing the victim, and he was playing it hard. Jessica, he said, and his voice actually cracked on my name. Your brother won't let us inside to talk. I stood my ground at the edge of the driveway, keys still clutched in my fist. Because you weren't invited, Nathan. Richard took a step forward, his jaw tight, his voice booming with rehearsed outrage. This is absolutely appalling, Jessica. You have humiliated our entire family. One impulsive moment, and you're ready to destroy everything we've built. Do you have any idea what people are saying about you? That you've completely lost your mind? My laugh came out brutal and hollow. Ending an engagement with a midnight text message isn't an impulsive moment. It's a calculated decision. Or was the mistake that I found out, Arthur? For just a flicker, barely a heartbeat, I saw it. Guilt. Something raw and unguarded flashed across Nathan's face before it hardened back into indignation. What is that supposed to mean? He snapped, far too quickly, far too defensively that I didn't have proof. Not yet. Only that gut-deep certainty that I'm not in love with you anymore wasn't the full story. There was more. There had to be. But proof or not, the outcome remained the same. It means we're done, I said flatly. Completely done. Richard's face flushed crimson. He made one mistake, and you're throwing his entire life away. Do you have any idea what this will do to our family's reputation? To our standing in the community? There it was again. That word. Reputation. It wasn't about Nathan's choices or my pain or the wedding I'd paid for that would never happen. It was about appearances. About saving face. About maintaining the illusion that the Caldwell family was perfect. Nathan's voice broke into something uncomfortably close to a whine. I can't afford a new place on my own right away, Jess. And I can't move all my stuff by myself. You have to help me. I shook my head slowly, my heart hammering but my voice absolutely steady. No, Nathan. I don't. You're a grown man. This is the direct consequence of the choice you made. Figure it out. I turned toward Carson's front door, but Richard's voice cracked after me like a whip. We'll be speaking to our attorney about this. You can't just abandon him and walk away. There will be legal consequences. The threat was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I walked inside, shut the door firmly behind me, and let the silence swallow their shouting. They lingered outside for another 10 minutes, shadows shifting across the closed curtains, voices rising and falling. Then finally, blessedly, they left. The next day, I hired a moving company. I paid them to pack every single item Nathan had left behind in our apartment, box it carefully, and transport it to a storage unit in Naperville. I even paid for the first month's rent on the unit. Then I mailed the access key to Richard's law office via certified mail with tracking. Clean, decisive, professional. I thought that would be the end of it. That they'd finally leave me alone. But endings, I was rapidly learning, rarely arrive when you expect them. Because just when I believed I had finally cut the last thread binding me to Nathan Caldwell, his cousin Vanessa appeared in my life. And with her, the nightmare took on a new, sharper edge. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning, just as I was finally allowing myself to believe the worst was over. "Hi, Jessica. This is Brandon, the new tenant." His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. We have a problem. A big one." My stomach dropped like a stone. "What kind of problem?" "There's someone living in the apartment. She says she lives here now. She won't leave." My mouth went dry. "What's her name?" He hesitated. "Vanessa. She says she's Nathan's cousin." I closed my eyes. The name alone was enough to make my pulse spike painfully. Vanessa Caldwell, Nathan's cousin, the perpetual couch surfer of the family. The one who never had a place of her own but always had an excuse. Always had a sob story. Always had her hand out. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. The boxes Nathan had dragged his feet about clearing out. The way he'd ignored my deadlines. He hadn't been procrastinating. He'd been planning. Nathan hadn't moved out at all. He'd moved Vanessa and I hung up with Brandon, hands trembling with fury, and immediately called my attorney, Linda Ramirez. She listened quietly as I explained the situation, and then she let out a low whistle. "Oh, he didn't," Linda muttered. "Jessica, that's an illegal sublet. And worse, if this Vanessa person has been living there, she may have established residency. The police won't intervene without a court order. You'll need to start a formal eviction process." It felt surreal, like falling into a trap I hadn't even known was being set. Like Nathan had been 3 steps ahead of me the entire time, playing chess while I thought we were just trying to separate our lives. Vanessa refused to answer the door for the process server. It took 3 attempts over a full week before the eviction notice could finally be posted and legally certified as delivered. Days bled into weeks while Brandon and Kelsey, the young newlywed couple who had trusted me, were stuck paying rent for an apartment they couldn't actually live in. I covered their hotel costs. My sense of responsibility wouldn't allow me to do otherwise. But every bill that arrived felt like another cut, another wound, draining me financially and emotionally. Nathan's cowardice was costing me thousands of dollars. Again. And then the emails started arriving. Richard wrote first, his words dripping with righteous indignation. "I understand you're attempting to evict my niece, who is only there to protect Nathan's personal belongings. Your continued harassment of our family has gone far beyond acceptable. Our attorney has informed us that we have a very strong case for emotional and financial damages that you have inflicted upon Nathan." That I nearly dropped my laptop from the sheer audacity. Emotional damages. From a man who ended our engagement with a text message. But Linda's advice was firm and clear. Do not respond to anything they send. Every message they write is evidence. Let them bury themselves. So I stayed silent. And somehow, that silence made me more dangerous than any angry reply ever could have been. Because while the Caldwell family schemed and threatened, Linda dug deeper. One evening she called, her voice bright with the thrill of discovery. "Jessica, you need to see this. Vanessa's Instagram. She's been posting about her new apartment." My hands shook as I opened the screenshots Linda sent over. There was Vanessa, posing in my living room, the one I'd decorated, the one I'd paid for. The captions bragged about her amazing new place, her steal of a deal. And then Linda sent the smoking gun. Screenshots of a text conversation between Vanessa and Nathan. "Thanks for the hookup, cuz. $500 cash a month is perfect." Nathan's reply, "No problem. Just keep it on the down low for now." My chest went hot, fury pulsing through me in waves. Nathan hadn't just abandoned me. He wasn't just a coward. He was actively profiting off my pain. He was renting out an apartment he no longer had any legal right to, pocketing cash under the table, while I bled money covering hotel costs for the couple he displaced. I saved every screenshot. Every post, every careless word. Evidence. Documentation. Proof. And for the first time in weeks, the fear and exhaustion churning in my stomach gave way to something sharper and cleaner. Resolve. Nathan thought he'd trapped me in his mess. But all he'd actually done was hand me the rope to hang him with that I used to think heartbreak was the worst pain a person could endure. I was wrong. Heartbreak is sharp and fast. It cuts you open in one clean strike, brutal but brief. What Nathan and his family were doing to me now was different. It was a slow grinding, 1,000 paper cuts designed to bleed me dry over time, to make me give up, to make me go away quietly. Every day brought a new email, a new demand, a new threat that Richard's tone shifted from condescending to openly hostile. Nathan deserves financial assistance while he searches for appropriate housing. You left him with absolutely nothing. If you refuse to do what's right, we will see you in court. Then another. Cease your unlawful harassment of Vanessa immediately. She is safeguarding Nathan's property. Your actions are causing immense stress and emotional harm to our entire family. I read each one once. Saved them into the folder labeled Nathan plus Richard. And let them rot there like spoiled fruit. Meanwhile, Vanessa dug her heels deeper into my apartment. She ignored the quit notice. She ignored the follow-ups. She posted cheerfully on social media about how her flaky landlord was trying to kick her out, how she'd scored the best apartment deal in Chicago that I wanted to scream. To storm into that apartment and physically drag her out by her wrist. But Linda's words echoed in my head like a mantra. Do not contact them directly. Do not give them the ammunition they desperately want. This is a legal matter now. So I bit my tongue until it bled and wrote checks instead. Checks for Brandon and Kelsey's extended hotel stay. Checks for Linda's mounting legal fees. Checks for court filing costs. Every dollar felt like a stone being piled on my chest, crushing me slowly. But then Linda called one evening, her voice sharp with restrained triumph. Jessica, we've got them. We've got them cold. She'd compiled everything. Vanessa's public Instagram posts, showing her living in the apartment. Photos with captions bragging about her $500 monthly rent. And the absolute clincher. That screenshot of Nathan's text message. Stay as long as you want. Just keep it on the down low. The words hit me like a physical blow. Confirmation of what I'd suspected all along. This wasn't incompetence or miscommunication. It was deliberate. It was collusion. It was fraud. Linda's voice broke through my rage. This is rental fraud, Jessica. He had absolutely no legal right to sublet. They've completely buried themselves. The judge is going to destroy them. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled without my chest aching. Proof. Hard, undeniable, documented proof. But relief didn't erase the exhaustion. Nights still stretched long and dark, filled with thoughts that clawed at me in the silence. You loved him once. You planned a life with him. How did it come to this? How did the man who promised forever become the man actively trying to destroy you? Sometimes when I closed my eyes, I could still see him as he used to be, laughing with me over burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, holding my hand during late-night walks along the lakefront, whispering plans for the future we'd never live. And then I'd see that text message again. 7 words that reduced me from partner to problem in a single brutal stroke. That I wanted to hate him. God, I wanted it to be that simple and clean. But what I actually felt was so much worse. It was grief tangled with fury. Love curdled into something toxic and unrecognizable. A story that should have ended with happiness twisted into something ugly. The court date loomed, each day dragging me closer. I couldn't stop replaying how it would unfold. What Nathan would say. What Richard would accuse me of. What lies Vanessa would tell. But beneath all the fear and bone-deep fatigue, something had changed inside me. A quiet steel had settled in my core, solid and unshakable. They thought they could crush me with entitlement and threats and manipulation. They thought my silence meant weakness. They thought I would eventually just give up and go away. But I wasn't breaking. I was gathering evidence, building my case, preparing for battle. And soon, in a courtroom under harsh fluorescent lights, all their schemes would be dragged into the open for a judge to see. The maze was almost over. And at the end of it, a reckoning waited. The courthouse smelled faintly of industrial cleaner and burnt coffee. My palms were damp against the manila folder Linda had instructed me to carry. Inside it, months of emails, invoices, certified letters, bank statements, and most damning of all, the screenshots of Nathan's deal with Vanessa. When we walked into the courtroom, Vanessa was already there, slouched in her chair like a sulking teenager called to the principal's office. Nathan sat directly behind her, shoulders rigid, eyes fixed on some point in the middle distance, refusing to look at me. Richard was beside him, muttering furiously under his breath like a coach psyching up a failing team. For a brief moment, I almost didn't recognize Nathan. His once gentle features had hardened into something defensive and cornered. The man I had imagined growing old with looked like a stranger caught in a lie he couldn't talk his way out of. The judge entered. We all rose. My pulse thundered so loudly in my ears I could barely hear the bailiff. Linda spoke first, calm and precise. She laid out the facts like pearls on a string. The valid lease transfer with Brandon and Kelsey. The properly served eviction notice. The hotel bills I'd been covering for weeks. The evidence of Vanessa's social media posts. The bank records showing money changing hands. Finally, Linda held up the printed copy of Nathan's text conversation with Vanessa, enlarged so the entire courtroom could read it. Stay as long as you want. Just keep it on the down low. The words echoed in the quiet courtroom like a gunshot. The judge's eyes lifted, sharp as broken glass. Mr. Caldwell, she addressed Nathan directly, her voice dangerously soft. Did you or did you not authorize your cousin to reside in this apartment after your lease obligations were terminated? Nathan's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He stammered. I was just trying to help her out. She needed. By committing rental fraud. Linda cut in smoothly. The silence that followed was absolutely devastating. That Vanessa's eyes darted toward Nathan, betrayal flickering across her face as she realized he'd thrown her under the bus. Richard's jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might shatter. The judge's voice dropped to that dangerous courtroom softness that means someone is about to get destroyed. This court finds that Ms. Caldwell acted entirely within her rights as the legal tenant of record. The unlawful detainer is granted, effective immediately. Ms. Vanessa Caldwell must vacate the premises within 72 hours. Vanessa let out a strangled what? But the gavel had already fallen with a sharp crack. And furthermore, the judge continued, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Given the extensively documented expenses incurred by Ms. Caldwell, hotel accommodations, attorney fees and court costs, this court orders Mr. Nathan Caldwell to reimburse her in full within 30 days. The number Linda had calculated was even higher than all the wedding deposits I'd lost combined. That my breath caught in my throat. It felt cold and sharp and perfectly just. Across the aisle, Nathan's face crumbled. Not with regret or remorse, but with pure resentment. His glare cut into me as though I had somehow betrayed him. As though his lies and schemes and manipulation weren't the entire reason we were standing in this room. Richard muttered something to him, already hustling him toward the door, their defeat trailing behind them like smoke. Vanessa followed, arms crossed, fury written across every line of her body. And then they were gone. I sat very still in my chair, hands folded carefully in my lap. I had imagined this moment countless times. I'd pictured it feeling like triumph, like vindication, like a grand slam victory. Instead, it felt quiet, heavy, almost sad. Winning didn't bring joy. It brought release. When Linda touched my shoulder gently and whispered, "You did it, Jessica," I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. For the first time in months, I was completely steady. As we stepped out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sunlight, I thought about those 7 words that had shattered my entire world. That I'm not in love with you anymore. For the first time since that terrible night, they didn't sting. They sounded irrelevant, powerless, like something that had happened to someone else in another lifetime. Because whatever Nathan felt or claimed not to feel no longer had any power over me. I had won. Not because a judge had ruled in my favor, but because I had refused to let his cowardice define me. I had chosen methodical action over emotional destruction. I had chosen documentation over drama. I had chosen to rebuild rather than burn everything down. 3 months later, I moved into a new apartment in Lincoln Park. Smaller, simpler. Mind that I sold most of the furniture I'd put in storage, unwilling to drag remnants of my old life into this new one. Every empty corner was a reminder that I was starting from scratch. And for the first time, that didn't terrify me. It felt like possibility. Carson took me on a weekend trip to Starved Rock. We hiked until our lungs burned, drank cheap wine under impossible stars, and sat in companionable silence that felt sacred. On the last night, he nudged me with his shoulder and said, "You look different, Jess. Lighter. Like you finally put something down." Maybe I had. Weeks blurred into months. My life took on a new rhythm. Work, solitude, quiet evenings where the silence felt like peace rather than punishment. I stopped checking the Nathan folder. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Then one morning, an email notification appeared on my phone. Congratulations! Your listing has sold. The wedding dress. After nearly 6 months, someone had actually bought it. A week later, a letter arrived at my new address. A handwritten card, the kind people rarely send anymore. The return address read, Sophia Chun, Minneapolis, MN. Inside was a photograph. A radiant woman wearing the very dress I had once chosen, standing on a beach somewhere beautiful with her new husband. Laughter and joy caught perfectly in the golden hour light. Her words were simple and perfect. Jessica, I don't know the full story behind this gown. Only that it was meant for a future that didn't happen. I wanted you to see the future it found instead. Thank you for letting it be part of our beginning. I sat there at my small kitchen table, staring at that photograph until my vision blurred with tears. That dress had once symbolized betrayal, loss, public humiliation. Now it symbolized joy. Not my joy, but joy all the same. And I realized something as I traced the outline of Sophia's smile with my thumb. Nathan's betrayal had shaped me, had tested me, had nearly broken me. But it had not defined me. I had chosen, again and again, not to be malicious but methodical. Not to destroy but to rebuild. Not to match his cowardice with cruelty. His actions, Richard's venom, Vanessa's entitlement, they were all just chapters in my story. Painful chapters, yes. But not the whole book. The final chapter, the one I was writing now in this small apartment with empty corners and infinite possibility, belonged entirely to me. And that, I thought as I pinned Sophia's photograph to my refrigerator, was the truest victory of all.